Oh,
Dave.
that means I have to leave. I have to leave.
No, hey. All right. Hey, Dave, thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, this is awesome. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be great. This is this is an impromptu. Well, impromptu. We did plan it, but you had some questions from some of your people, and we're going to answer those questions. I hope we can do it. I hope I can do it nicely because I can't hear very well because I'm wearing my. You know what I'm saying? Okay. So look, Dave, for what remains? 3 different boxes, right?
Yep.
Is that like because you didn't want to do any expansions later on, so you just said, let's push it now? And like, is that some sort of wicked marketing thing that you did because you're kind of evil a little bit? Or is it because it's that guy, Dan Verson?
Maybe it's both of those. Maybe it's both of those. So there's 3 different. Now that we relaunched the Kickstarter. Like, so it was on Kickstarter one time, and we relaunched. It was a little bit different setup the first time. The truth of it is, so all of it was designed, right? Like, all of this stuff I've been working on it for many, many years, and it was all designed. And so one thing we didn't want to do was like come out with a game and then have a bunch of content that we just held back for expansions later on.
Right.
So then the question really was like, how do we package all of this stuff? It's way too expensive for a single game. Nobody would be able to buy a game with 6 factions and tons of all this stuff. So we tried to figure out a way that, like, how could we make the content available to people, but also give them the opportunity to play the game, the complete game, at a much lower, like, the price of just one game. And so that was the solution we came up with. And I don't know if it was the right solution or not, but 3 different games, they're all completely standalone. So, you don't have to have all 3. But if you buy one and you really love it, then it's there to have.
So this basically is a miniatures game, right?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, it started in my mind. So this, for people that don't know, For What Remains, it's basically like a miniature skirmish combat game meets a tactical war game, right? It started in the mid-2000s. It was the first ever game I designed before I even really knew what hobby board games were. And so I started working on it with the idea that it was basically like a minis board game hybrid. That was the original intent. And then over the years, as I discovered hobby board games, as I discovered war games, it morphed a few times into what it is now, which is essentially, like I said, a minis skirmish game mixed with a bunch of war game concepts.
Now, you chose post-apocalyptic, right?
Yep. Yeah, post-apocalyptic. When I'm doing anything fictional, like if it's in a fictional universe genre at all, post-apocalyptic's my favorite by far. So yeah, I said it what I love. Basically, it's the game I want to play, right? I kind of designed it for me. So post-apocalyptic's my favorite. So that's what I went with.
And are there any sci-fi elements to this?
Yeah. Yep. So I would say there's 6 total factions. I mean, there's mechs, there's crazy otherworldly creatures, there's these mutated inorganic or organic matter guys. So there's a lot of sci-fi elements thrown into it. It is post-apocalyptic, so it's not, other than like a couple of factions are a little bit thematically out there. It's not like future far tech kind of stuff. Mostly mechs, that kind of thing.
Are we going into space at any time?
Well, if people really like the system, like let's say people are like, hey, what else can we do with it? If people are interested in learning about like the origins of the game, right? If they really want to dig deep,
right?
The game at one time was called Skirmish Tactics Apocalypse. That's what it was called before I changed the name to For What Remains. And so there's a Board Game Geek entry on it, and there's years of fan-made material, or where I would engage with people. We made other factions. We made a fantasy variant. So there's all sorts of like fan-made content and stuff where I would just kind of riff on ideas. We didn't do sci-fi. We didn't do space, but we did do fantasy. But I mean, yeah, you could absolutely do whatever you wanted.
Right. And we got Herman. We got Herman on, and he's a big post-apocalyptic nerd.
Yeah,
And
Herman's awesome.
of course, he's awesome. He's a dream team guy.
We're the co-sexiest war game designers, right?
Oh my God! I'm sorry I ever said that. I don't know what happened, but yeah, sure. And I know Herman's working on a post-apocalyptic game, which I gotta shut up. He told me stuff. I gotta shut up. I can't say nothing. Yeah. Just like when you tell me stuff, sometimes I gotta shut up. But since I do the news, I have a right to tell the people what I know.
Yeah.
Don't
I want to know. Tell us about what Herman's working on.
No, I can't.
Give us the scoop.
I can't.
Jesus. Herman would be like at the top of my list of people that I'd want to collaborate with in the future. I think.
Okay, Herman, awesome. You heard that? You heard that, eh? You heard that? That was my show. 10%. I get 10% of whatever you guys do together. Enough of this being poor and stuff. And okay.
If you got 10% of our commission, let's say we designed a game and you got 10% of it, then you'd have like $5.
I know. So okay. So you did three different modules. They're all self-contained. You can play whatever faction you want or whatever box you want to buy.
Yep.
Are there any? Well, because I know it's new, and it's ridiculous to ask now. But is there any future expansions?
Yeah. There were. Okay, so the answer is not. It's not my decision, right? It's going to be whether people buy it or not, right? So people would have to buy it, and Dan would have to say, "Hey, people want more. Let's give them more." That's what would have to happen. So we'll see. As far as like, is there content to be made? Absolutely. So there's two factions. Yeah, absolutely. There's okay. So let's talk for a second about the two guys that I've worked with the most on this game with. They're credited in the game as co-designers. So one is Ricardo Thomas from Portugal, and one is Paul Lowe from Singapore. So I've been working with both those guys for many years on this. Paul Lowe's group in Singapore was the primary, like, ridiculous playtest group, breaking the game, figuring out degenerate strategies, that kind of stuff. So those guys are a huge part of it. Ricardo's when it comes to like the backstory development, he's huge. And then Paul is kind of like the main developer for the actual, like I said, breaking the game. That's a long way of saying that the three of us have worked together, and Paul with his group in Singapore, to flesh out a couple of other factions that are pretty far along, that if there was a green light, we could finish them up. One was like a faction that leverages water heavily, mutated creatures, and then the other one is a faction that kind of bends time. So they all sorts of like time manipulation type powers.
Wow, you can go anywhere with this, eh? For real.
Yeah.
And the thing is whose imagination is working on this? Is it yours?
So I would say with the factions that are out now, those were they originated with me, like the original concepts originated with me. But other than the original two first factions, which were in the Streets of Ruin set, the picture you have up, those were 100% me with a lot of development from the other guys. The other four factions were mostly my original idea, but huge chunks of that they helped me develop. And then those last two factions that I mentioned, the most recent ones that aren't finished, neither of those came from me. They came from other people originally that we riffed off of.
Okay.
So,
I'm stuck on sci-fi for some reason. I don't know why. Because you got, what did you say? You have time travel. Travel.
Yep.
You got water bending.
Yeah, so like creatures that originated from water, right? So we would add a lot more water texture to the maps, right? So right now, water doesn't play a huge role in the terrain that you're in, but we would add a lot more if that faction was to be added to the game, and then they would leverage that, right? So they'd be stronger in water. They would use the water to their advantage throughout on the battlefield.
Is this like a Cthulhu influence?
Yeah, more like mutated creatures, right? So these guys were like partially, fish, like hybrid fish creatures, mutants.
Oh man, so you're creating a world here.
Oh yeah. So I will say this is cool that he thinks this way. So this is Nate's Nate Rogers, so Gimpy Gamer. Gimpy loves the lore, right? So there's a whole backstory in the game. It's mostly in the rule books. There's a couple of short stories, like really short. The backstory with a full timeline, and then the campaigns themselves have some story to them. And then there's a ton more story that's not published anywhere. That's on Board Game Geek. We'll publish like little short stories here and there. There's a ton of lore behind it for sure. It was also the setting. It was also the setting of some role playing campaigns that I ran too at different times. So there's tons of material that's in the background that it's not out.
Okay, so I've got a few questions here, and let me fix my ADD mind here. My first thing is that it reminds me of when Herbert, the Dune, who did Frank Herbert. Yep. And when he started something, people wrote into him and said, "Are you starting a cult?" Because it's understandable. I mean, my God, there's a dictionary, this, that's, whatever. So you're going that way a little bit. You're going that way. Are you going to expand like a Tolkien type thing? You're going to expand in the fauna and the animals and the different. Like, is this where it's going?
Let me tell you. That's funny you should ask. So I grew up playing D&D. Like, I didn't discover board games until much later. So I was big into D&D. I was always the dungeon master. That's how I got my creative juices flowing or whatever. I remember being so into my stories and stuff that I wrote that, like, you could go into a tavern and there would be there were recipes for the fake drinks that it was like off the charts. And I'm not making that up. Like,
I'm asking that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It was like so detailed that no one would ever encounter. And the way I dungeon mastered is, I would just know the world lore, and I would never like script the adventure. Right, I would just be basically winging it because I knew the background material in the setting, and so I could just wing it. Which is totally different now. I don't know if you can see it. I've got a D&D box because me and the kids and I play.
Yeah.
And they won't let me wing it. They won't let me do anything but run a book adventure because for whatever reason, they think that's how it's supposed to run. So, and I'm like, hey, let's you guys tell me what you want to do, and we'll just do that. I better have like printed sheets in front of me or a book or whatever. They won't. They won't just let me run an adventure.
Yeah, but first of all, it's Dad. What does Dad know?
I know, it's true.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, listen, man, I've been there, done that. You know what I'm saying? Okay. What was my other question? Okay, so now I see what's happening. Okay, and it's happening live here. What's gonna happen if this really takes off and you're a big RPG guy, dungeon master, strapping, good-looking American guy? What's gonna happen with us war gamers? Are you gonna be doing more war games, or is this the end of it? Is this where David Thompson says, "Sayonara, suckers, I'm going there"?
First of all, I don't think we have to worry about that. I don't think it's going to take off to that extent. Man, I hope. I mean, so here's the thing. My best-selling games are War Chest, Undaunted, those kind of games, right? No matter what, I'm not going to be in a situation where I'm not making the next by stealth and sea. You know what I mean? Like, I just don't ever see that happening.
No, David, I don't know what you mean, because stuff happens in life, and us people who supported you, who love you, man, we're there for you. Are we gonna be heartbroken one day, David?
I don't think so. Because those are the games. So the games that I get the most fun out of designing are Soldiers and Postmen's uniforms and by stealth. Like, I like For What Remains. But I started on it at a different time in my life. Like, I was, literally 15 years ago. I had no idea that 15 years later I was going to be into World War II to the level I am, to war games. So I don't get nearly, like, I enjoy working with other people to design it, but it's not nearly the same love that I have when I'm researching some new battle to do the background notes on a war game design.
So says you. Okay, let's.
Hopefully, was that the right answer? That was,
Well,
that's what I was supposed to
it
say.
was an answer. It was an answer. I'm just a messenger here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what? Let's take a question from my peanut gallery. Nathaniel Robinson, who speaks about 27,000 different languages, has a question, Dave. And can you read it, or would you like me to read this out loud?
Yeah. How do the various sets differ from one another? What compels you to put specific factions together in the same box? Okay, so I'm gonna
go ahead. This is your
have
show,
a little right. So we've got the first set here, which is Streets of Ruin, which is the picture Dan had up. So this is the first set for a lot of reasons. It's the first set I ever designed, so it's the base guys. It's also probably the easiest to play, though the game is super low complexity, right? So none of these are complex at all. So it's basically human rebels versus mechs, right? So you can see the mech on the backside. So that set. So first of all, I should say there's a sort of overarching plot that runs across all three games. It starts in the first one, continues the second one, and culminates in the last one. And I'll show them in order. You can play the campaigns without that. That's okay. But there is a story that runs through them. So even if all you did was play them in that order to get the story in the right sequence, I would suggest that. But really what I wanted to do was give players a different play experience. So both of these factions are primarily ranged combatants. The rebels are more about like inspiring, like comboing off with one another, whereas the mechs are just stronger, better, the best ranged attackers or whatever. The next one is Blood on the Rails. So this one has a group of humans that have like psychic powers, so they can do all sorts of crazy stuff. Telekinesis, pyromancy, all sorts of stuff like that. And they're fighting against a group called the Soldiers of Light, who essentially they blame humanity on the fall of like the post-apocalyptic problems. And so they're all religious zealots who from different monotheistic religions that have banded together, and they blame technology on the fall of mankind. So this is basically a group of psychic humans versus humans that don't use technology, but they ride crazy dragon creatures.
Right.
All right. And then out of the basement. So the main background story to all of this world is a place called the basement, which is like an alternate reality that mankind created an entrance to that world through nuclear testing. So nuclear testing is key to the background in all of the game. So it opened up a world or a portal into a different world where these creatures that have like it's called Nether, which is like dark powers, right? It's kind of undeadish. And then humankind created these guys called the Earthen, which are creatures of organic material that they created to specifically go into this alternate realm to fight them. So, and again, so those are mostly melee combatants, both those factions. So there's some mechanical reasons, there's some thematic reasons, some story reasons why I combined each of those. But again, each set has two factions, is completely standalone, has a separate part of the story. So each of them have their own campaign. They each have their own set of tiles that you play with. And those tiles can be combined so that you can make, different terrain, whatever you want to call it, mix across the two. And all of them are totally interchangeable. So if you wanted to, you could go in and fight factions across different boxes or whatever. And then each game is also completely solitaire friendly, right? There's an AI system. So you can switch out the factions and play through the different campaigns solitaire if you want.
Okay. This comes basically from your mind. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, okay. So let's back up. So let's talk about the origin of the game.
Right.
So as I said, this was created in the mid 2000s, or the original idea came out in the mid 2000s. Now I didn't know about board games, right? So I was a big RPG guy. So the only thing I knew about board games was like when I would go to the store to buy RPGs, I would see like Twilight Imperium, and I said, that's a interesting looking thing, but I have no idea what that is. So there's some exceptions to that. So I grew up playing D&D. I loved when I was really young, or when I was young. So I played tactical role-playing video games, so like Final Fantasy Tactics, that kind of stuff. I liked those. when I joined the Air Force and just started getting into college, so like my late teens, early 20s, I discovered the original Mage Knight Clicks game. So Hero Clicks, you turn the little dials. Okay. So there's when I say Mage Knight, most people think of the popular board game. Yeah, exactly. But there was the original before Hero Clicks. There was a game called Mage Knight, which was the original version of Hero Clicks, and so I played that. So it was a mini skirmish combat game with that click system. I played Blood Bowl, right? Okay. And Fallout Tactics. So the Fallout video game. It was like a tactical combat game.
You mean Fallout, like video game Fallout?
Yeah, Fallout, the video game. But there was a game called the Fallout Tactics. So it was like the RPG, but it was just a tactical combat game.
Okay.
So the reason I mentioned all of those are all of the, I would say, the most direct influences to the design when I first started creating it. So all of those things sort of scooped together, swirled together. That's when I first started. And then when I decided, a few years ago to bring it back, then you can see all of this, like there's basically step losses, right? Like counter stacking and step losses. There's chit pull for unit activation. All of those things came completely when I redid it, right? So I basically took all this stuff when I first envisioned it, completely revamped it with modern war game concepts, but tried to keep it super, super simple.
Okay, hold on a second here. Now, this something came to my mind right now. So you're a young buck kind of a guy, right? Yeah, I didn't know you were that much of a nerd, but man, Dave,
I'm a pretty big nerd.
Bloody hell! Anyway, so because you have a history with Dan Verson, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Dan's gonna listen to you, right? So can you imagine a young kid pitching this to anybody?
Well, I mean, so full disclosure, there was a different publisher had it a few years ago, and it never got published. And it was going to be a minis game, right? But I will say this: that was prior to it being reworked, and so it was. I think it's a much better game now. So thank God it didn't happen, right? I mean, here's the truth of the matter: I'm super, super, super blessed to be working with Dan because
of course.
You know what I mean?
Yes, and here's is Dan as big as a nerd as you are?
I don't think anybody's as big a nerd as I am.
Really?
I don't know, man. I'm a pretty big nerd.
That's great. Oh man, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm gonna cut in and out like that, Dave.
Yeah,
it's the way my mind works. You know what I'm saying? Oh, look, a red squirrel. Herman had a great question here, and I want to know. Hold on a second. Where is that? Where was that question? Herman had a great question. Okay, here you go. This is very interesting. So, are there plans for a strategic level game in this world?
Oh man, there's no plans, but that would be cool.
That's a good question. I mean, Herman's an old school man.
Yeah, that's a cool idea. Wow, yeah, that'd be fun. That would be fun. Yeah. Yeah, I could see it going a couple of different ways. There's two factions, the Combine, which are kind of like the people who rule over the militant arm of the people who rule over what's left of the world.
That word Combine.
Combine.
Did you steal from what's that game?
I didn't. I've never played. So I've never played Half-Life, but a buddy of mine told me that. I know. So here's the thing. I never played video games after the original PlayStation. So from like whatever that was, the early to mid 90s.
Yeah.
Till now, I've never played any video games.
Right. Same as me.
Yeah. So a buddy of mine was like, hey, he was reading it, and this was probably less than a year ago. He's reading the lore for it. He's like, hey, you do realize that there's a thing in Half-Life called Combine. So maybe I accidentally, subconsciously stole it. I don't know.
I mean, first of all, what a great game, and what you're talking about in For What Remains, and that's why I asked, are you creating a world? Because that's what Half-Life did. That's what Fallout to some extent, but Half-Life more so, and obviously Doom. Frank Herbert came to me.
Yeah,
and I mean, you could go far with this. You could go.
So, I mean, it would be awesome if we
Anyway.
had a. Now, I would tell you what I will probably do, and I'll probably do this independent of anything else. When I originally envisioned the game, it was around the time that D&D Third Edition came out. And when D&D Third Edition came out, they came out with it was an open gaming license, is what they called it. So anybody could develop material for it. And so what I've envisioned doing is coming out with basically an open version of this game. The rules, right? So the rules would be free to download, the core rules, and basically say, hey, if anybody wants to develop content for it, go forth and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, because it was always envisioned as sort of being like a community type development thing.
Right. It's large. It's huge.
Yeah.
It's huge.
So yeah, that would be awesome. Even if we never published another thing, I would like to at least do that.
Man, bloody hell. It's huge, Dave. When I heard For What Remains, and a little bit about it, and those guys, what do they call it? The Farmer's Aid. What do they call it? Whatever. Those guys that were talking about it, and I gotta watch them a little bit, so I gotta get ahead of that guy. What's his name? Little Ketchup. And hold on a second. Let me ask you something. All right, I'm a respectable guy. You know what I mean? What did I do to you, man? Those guys at the Farmer's Aid, why are they getting the games before I'm getting? I know it's Canada Post. But
do you know?
I'm in the dark here, Dave. I'm in the dark here.
I think mails just stopped being delivered to Canada. There was a review copy. There was a review copy of something. I know. There was a review copy of something that I had sent to a podcast in Canada at the same time that the Player's Aid. I sent a copy to both of those, and the Player's Aid guys got their copy like 3 weeks ago, and the podcast in Canada is still waiting for theirs. No, it's coming from the UK.
You know what it is? It's because we don't allow any Americans in Canada, so you guys are pissed off, and so we're not getting. I was gonna swear, but I'm not, because this is a family show. By the way, are your children and your wife watching?
They're not.
Nah, they don't care, man.
They don't care.
My wife, when I do a new piece of music, she's like, can we watch TV instead? Well, whatever. Okay, so let's see here, Dave. This is huge. Okay, I don't see you going anywhere else in your mind on a different topic, because this is so huge. I'm sure it occupies like a good 3/4 of all your thoughts in terms of gaming. How many games you got going now, man?
Okay, so the next big one is Sniper Elite. Have we talked about that?
Yes, we have, and I can't wait.
So it launches Tuesday on Kickstarter.
It launches this Tuesday. Well, thanks for telling me, Dave.
Yeah, I know. You got the scoop first.
Wait, hold on. Did the Farmer's Aid know?
I don't think so. It has not been well publicized. I think the plan is to like kind of. Oh no, I say Tuesday, maybe Wednesday. I don't know. The bottom line is you can tell the difference between when I work with DVG on something and I work with anybody else on something, right? Because when I'm working with DVG, I'm like an integral part of it. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
Then you have Sniper Elite with Rebellion, and it's like, man, it's like a machine, and they're doing all their stuff behind the scenes, and I have no idea.
How big is Rebellion?
Well, Rebellion's huge because it's a UK-based media company they make movies and TV shows and comic books and video games and everything. Yeah.
So I guess the board game side is a write-off for them type of
well,
thing.
they just
so keen.
yeah. So I think I told you this, but this is a cool story. The guy who's standing up their board game division, Duncan Malloy, is the guy who stood up Osprey's board game division. And obviously Osprey has Undaunted, right? So
right.
That's how I made the connection with
him. That's the
him.
same guy?
Same guy. Yep. So he stood up Ospreys, and now he's gone to Rebellion to stand up their board game division, which is why he reached out to me to design it.
Wow, that guy's getting around, eh?
Yeah, he's good. He's awesome. I love working with him.
Does he watch any reviews or podcasts on YouTube, or does he just do his thing and whatever?
I think he only watches No Enemies Here. I think that's the only thing he watches.
Nah, that's good. That's good. I'm very happy. But you tell that guy Dave that I'm a protected man, and that I know what it's all about. So you had some questions from some other guys, but they're not in the peanut gallery now asking the questions. Do you have set questions you want to answer from some of the guys?
Yeah. Did you see? I sent you some. You just want me to kind of read them off. How do you want to do that?
Yeah. Bloody hell! Now I got to go in my email now.
Well, I can. I mean, however we want to do it. I just want to make sure we cover. We don't have to cover them all.
No, that's cool.
Ask people on Facebook and on BGG if they had any questions for us.
Well, I have one here from Jason Bowman. It says, "What were the inspiration behind the factions and the setting? To me, it feels like it could fit right into the old TSR RPG Gamma world, as you had said, or your influences. And where do you go from here with new factions, campaign, etc.?" As I was saying,
So, I mean, we kind of already talked about that. I think I've listed all the main inspirations. I mean, obviously, D&D is probably the single biggest one. I would say that what I mentioned, Final Fantasy Tactics from the video game side, D&D, Blood Bowl, Mage Knight, all of those were inspirations for it. But then, from a setting perspective, name a post-apocalyptic thing, right? The Road, Book of Eli, Fallout Tactics.
You're talking RPG games here now.
I'm talking anything. I'm talking any media at all. Those are movies, right? The Road and the book. But anything that's post-apocalyptic, I would just absorb it, and it would, that's a huge inspiration.
Hey, Kabuki Kid's got a good question here. What was the version of D&D that cut you cut your teeth off?
No. That was referencing 3rd edition because they had the open gaming license. So this is funny. When I first started playing D&D, I was probably like, I don't know, 5th or 6th grade, something like that. And it was right as D&D was changing from 1st to 2nd edition. Okay, AD&D. So 1st to 2nd edition AD&D. I didn't really know what that meant. So I went to the store. My brother's a year older than me, so we grew up playing D&D together. We bought the player DMG and Monster Manual, player guide DMG and Monster Manual for 2nd edition. But the only setting material that we could find was Forgotten Realms, which was still 1st edition. And we just kludged them together and had no idea that they were different editions. Now, 1st and 2nd edition were relatively similar anyway. But it's just that was right as the 1st to 2nd edition transition was happening.
Do you enjoy being a game master?
Yeah, I enjoy creating stuff. So when I got married and had kids, I basically didn't have enough time to play D&D, but I had played pretty much my whole life up until then, and I just didn't have the time. And I was like, well, what do I do now to get that creative outlet? Which is why I started designing games. Really, it was like that pivot from dungeon master to game designer.
Okay. Personally, I know the publishing company called Nuts has a RPG World War II. Now, is there any? Will you be doing something like that? I mean,
I don't think I would actually design it. Man, I don't want to say I wouldn't. I don't foresee me designing an actual RPG. What I do theoretically would be interested in is designing a more narrative board game than I've done in the past, right? And so I've actually not details, like I don't have any kind of details on that, but like something like, Time Stories or Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective or some kind of where there's an actual board game structure to it, but it has a much more narrative arc than the stuff I've designed in the past.
Sherlock Holmes, eh? How does that fit in? I mean, I actually have the game and it's bloody difficult. I mean, I remember playing the first scenario and we got the killer on the 28th try, and it's like, well, Sherlock Holmes would have got it in 4, and it's
right, exactly, yeah. So I just mentioned Sherlock Holmes because people think of it as a, but I mean like Ambush or Combat, any of those, right? Like that's I'm interested in exploring that world for sure.
Like the ambush world.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. I don't know that it would be ambush, but like a very narrative driven war game or
Okay.
war themed game.
I mean, I think you just put your foot in your mouth, man, because you just said ambush. And I mean,
Well, people know what that is, right? There's a point of reference there.
No. What I'm trying to say is that people want ambush stuff.
I know. Yeah.
When will ambush be redone? Blah 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 blah. And Eric Lee Smith basically says, "I ain't gonna do that because it was so time consuming and oh my god, this and that." So, man, I hope you go there. David, I hope you go there.
Yeah, it's. I mean, that would be a lot to bite off because I honestly, well, we didn't. You asked me about what I'm working on. I mean,
Yeah.
so Sniper Elite's coming out, right? In a couple of weeks, it'll be kickstarting. They announced it, so this is officially announced. I don't know if you know them. So the Sadler brothers, Adam and Brady Sadler, they're best known for their work at Fantasy Flight for all kind of Star Wars stuff. But they have a game called Street Masters and Brook City. So they have their own popular like solo co-op games now. The guy that I made Undaunted with and I are doing a game with them called Dire Alliance.
Trevor Benjamin.
Yeah, that's right. Yep. So Trevor and I are doing a game with them called Dire Alliance that's going to kickstart in October. By Stealth and Sea comes out next month. The next expansion for War Chest comes out in a couple of months. And the next Undaunted is later, like in next year, but we're working on the one after that now. So there'll be a fourth game in the series. So, I mean, the bottom line is, you know, I don't really have a lot of free time in the current.
I was going to ask.
So it's like I have these ideas, but you don't get the. I mean, I'm not complaining, right? If somebody had said, "Hey, in 3 or 4 years, you know, you're not going to be able to have any time to work on stuff, new ideas because you're going to be busy," I'd have said, "Oh, whatever." You know, I wouldn't have believed it. So I'm super happy with where I am.
Well, okay, super happy. Does it become a chore now? Is it a chore?
It's not. Well, I'll tell you, it's not a chore. So I was trying to think back the last time I didn't wake up in the morning and work on game design stuff for at least a couple hours, and I can't remember that day. Right.
So I mean, wake up in the morning. What time you wake up?
So I usually wake up, but around 4:30. So usually 4:30 to 6:30 is game design time.
And hold on a second. And you thought this show was going to be on 9 o'clock, and we did up at 4:30. It's like, I wouldn't do that to you. I have respect, man. For God's sake. Okay. Now, do you foresee? And I'm getting off topic here. I'm going into David Thompson's life here. Do you foresee a time where this will be a full-time job?
No.
Well,
I told my wife if I was not married with kids, which I'm not saying I don't want to be married with kids. I love that, like obviously. But had I been single in this situation, then yeah, right? But I mean, I don't want to get political or anything like that. But in the U.S., you don't really want to be without a stable job with good insurance, etc. Right? Like that's not a great place to be. So I'm not going to give up my Department of Defense civil service job with great insurance and all of that. You know, it's just not with a family. It would have to be like Alan Moon Ticket to Ride money, stable, you know, like you can rely on a stable income for years to come kind of money.
Well, I mean, I don't know what to say. You're stressing me out. You're stressing me out, David.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot. That's a lot to handle on your shoulders, my friend. Let's not get into the politics side.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, it's independent of politics. It's just reality, right? Like as a guy married with,
it's your reality.
Yes, it is an American reality that you need to have I mean, I feel like as a guy with a family, you need to have a job where you don't have to worry about, am I going to have a job in a year or two? Do I have to worry about where I'm getting insurance from? That kind of stuff.
Jesus. You know, I'm Canadian, eh? And that's why I'm not stressed. I'm not stressed because I'm Canadian. You know, tomorrow I'm going to get up at, what time do I have to get up? I have to get up at 5. I'm going to go help my friend paint a little bit. I'm gonna take the scraper and scrape the stuff, and then I'm gonna come home at 2 o'clock, and I'm gonna go to the farm. I'm gonna make ribs, and I'm gonna come home.
Well, I mean, so let me just be clear, right? Because I don't want people to get the wrong impression. First of all, I love my day job, right? I love it. It's great. I get paid well. I don't have any concerns. But I mean, the point is, I put myself in that position for a reason, so that I could have a family and not stress those things, right?
Well,
like,
I'm glad you like your job.
I mean, yeah, it was. But I mean, again, like, you know, you can call it whatever you want. You can say, hey, you work towards that, and that's why it's not being blessed, or you can say you're being blessed. Whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It's the reality of life, right? Of my life.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it freaks me out that I have a lot of American friends, and it's like sometimes they're in situations where I don't want to get into politics.
I know. Let's get back to games.
What did you start this for? Anyways, Herman,
let's talk about games.
Kabuki, don't you have a question? Come on, this is an open house. It's open bar or whatever you want to call it.
What were some of these? Let's make sure we cover some of these other ones that were
okay. Hold on a sec. You know what? Let me go back to the email.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Actually, let's see. I think there was a question here. Okay, Robert Carroll. Do you have anything in the works to convert or convert the Pavlov eater system to other engagements? The Alamo, Rourke's Drift.
Yep. So the one that is we talk about games that are in work. So Soldiers and Postmen's Uniforms.
Right.
I know you know it.
Yep.
That's the next game that uses that system. It's probably closer to ITER than it is to Pavlov's House because it doesn't have the operational level stuff. That will kickstart in late October, early November. So that, for people that don't know, that's about on the first day of World War II, the Poles defended a Polish post office in the free city of Danzig against German attack.
It was the beginning of World War II. The ruse that Hitler. It was a ruse.
It was part of you know, the Poles in Danzig knew they were going to be part of that initial attack. They were ready. There were two places in Danzig, two Polish places that knew they were going to be attacked, and so they were ready for the attack. They were alert and prepared and thought they were going to be able to defend themselves and that the Poles would be able to save them. That's what they thought. And that was Westerplatte, which is like a peninsula out in Danzig, and then the Polish post office. So it's about their defense, the postman's defense of that building for a day.
The Poles actually thought they were going to.
Their plan, and now whether they actually ever, like the powers that be, strategically ever anticipated doing anything, probably not. But the people defending it absolutely believed that all they had to do was hold out, and that they would be reinforced, or the Poles would come in.
They didn't know about the German sneak building of arms and all that. Obviously, okay, I guess.
Yeah. Yep. So that's the game. That I've been working on for a few years. I think at 2017, I visited Gdansk, which is modern day Danzig. I went there with my wife, did all the research, went to the battle site. So that's been in work for a few years.
Is the post office still there?
Post office is still there. It's a museum now. It is a museum dedicated to the battle.
No kidding.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's amazing.
It's gotta be.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's awesome. I had thought that the next game in the series would be the Battle of Mortain, which is a U.S. defending against a German counterattack in World War II. And it may still be, but that game has kind of grown. That concept for the game has kind of grown, maybe to a different system. And so, the answer to the question beyond Soldier and Postman is I don't have a definitive answer. Things I would like to do with the system, right? I'm not saying these are going to be games. These are things I would like to do with it. Free State of Jones, if you've seen that movie, right?
It says something. Refresh my memory.
So this was a place, I think it was in Mississippi, Jones County, where you have basically Southerners who were protecting slaves against other Southerners attacking them. So it's set during Civil War time period.
Oh my God, that's so bleak.
I know. But here's the thing. Let's talk about this. Pavlov's house, Castle Itter, soldiers and postmen's uniforms. I mean, that it doesn't get any bleaker than this, right? So that battle, when the soldiers and postmen's uniform, when they lose, when they give up, when they surrender, it's because the Germans have doused the building in gasoline and set it on fire to burn them out. And there's a couple of non-combatants in the building, to include a little girl, and she dies because she's burned alive.
Oh.
So, I mean, it doesn't get any bleaker than that. But, I mean, that's the reason, in my opinion, that's the reason to make these games, is to tell these stories and to pay homage to the defenders, right?
Yeah, I know. And it's funny because I have a segment on the Dice Tower, and I'm trying to get, not that I'm not trying anymore, it's a history lesson. A good board game is a history lesson. And, man, some of these people don't care about it. They say it's too raw.
Yeah. But I mean, so I would say there's both sides are right. You know, absolutely. I love playing. I don't love. I think Freedom, the Underground Railroad is a fantastic game to experience. It is also super bleak. And if you come away from it feeling anything other than that, there's something wrong with you as a human. That doesn't mean everybody needs to play it.
That's right.
Like, you know what I mean? So if you don't like that, you should not subject yourself to it. That's, it's.
Well, I mean, Uwe had different, because I said the same thing to Uwe. I said, Uwe, that's one area that I just can't go into. And he was trying to tell me, no, man, I guess it's a learning tool.
It's a learning tool, but it doesn't mean that everybody has to experience it, right?
But don't you?
I mean, people should. I would say that people need to know about that.
Yeah,
right? You should not hide it. You shouldn't say it didn't exist. Right. Anything like that. That doesn't mean that you necessarily have to. Because have you played it?
No.
Okay, so you literally are making decisions about whether or not you let, like, hey, am I going to get this slave, right? The cube that represents slaves. Am I going to move them to Canada so that they escape?
Mm-hmm.
But if you're doing those actions to do that, you may never move cubes off of plantations, which means they never escape. Or you may let the slave catcher catch them. And I mean, you're making those decisions during the game. So unless you completely divorce yourself from the theme,
I can't.
You do it completely abstractly. It's you. I promise you can't, as a normal human, ever leave that game thinking of it.
I can't. Yeah. And no disrespect to Uwe and the game, this and that. I don't know, man. The subject is so like, oh my god. But if you play a Dan Versen game, Field Commander Rommel,
yeah,
there's SS units in it, man.
Yeah,
and so you know what I'm saying? It's just like, but it's a game, yeah. But SS.
Mm-hmm.
Look,
yep,
I understand.
Yeah,
I understand. Okay, can you stop bringing me down?
Yeah, our conversation's going all sorts of interesting, weird places that are not uplifting, right?
For what remains? What are we looking at? What's the date it's going to come out? So what's the Kickstarter, first of all?
For what remains is done. Yeah. It's shipped. It's out. It's done. It's done.
I'm thinking of the other game.
Yeah.
When is this? When are we having this in our hands?
It's shipped. I think the only place that doesn't have it is some people in Europe now.
No, Canada, man.
Well, I mean, Canada's not really. I don't know. No, I think the backers in Canada have received it too.
Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it's available in Canada.
All right,
pretty sure.
So what about Sniper?
Oh, so I really don't know. So it's designed. That's done. It will kickstart, I think, Wednesday. Like I said, it has a solo, so it's a hidden movement game, right? So have you ever played Scotland Yard or what is Fury of Dracula? Obviously, super famous.
No.
Spectre Ops. Have you played any of those?
But Spectre Ops sounds like a video game to me.
I mean, but you know the concept of hidden movement, right? One player secretly moves around the board, the other ones, or however they divide it up, try to find them. So it's a hidden movement game where one player plays the sniper. You're moving around trying to accomplish objectives, just like the video game, and then everybody else plays the defenders, right? 1 to 3 players play the defenders.
Well, it's 5-4.
Fog of War, yeah. And so one player has like a hidden board that they're tracking all their movements on, and then you resolve it. There's all sorts of systems for, trying to find them and how you deduce that. So it's a deduction hidden movement game. But the reason I bring it up is there's also a solitaire version of it. So David Turkey, who I don't know if you know him, he's famous in the solo solitaire design world for Euro games. He designed the solitaire system for it.
For Sniper.
For Sniper Elite. Yep. So there'll be a solitaire system for it. I don't know a ton about how the Kickstarter options will be. I think there's a base game, and there's like a nice deluxe version or whatever with like all kind of special minis and stuff like that. Not kind of tons, but with minis. And I think there's an option to get like extra boards because we designed 4 maps for it. Now, I don't think it actually like fulfills until next year sometime. So it's going to be a ways out.
And getting back to For What Remains, any thoughts on actually making minis for this?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I would say the system. So a couple of things. First of all, it was originally envisioned as a mini system, but it now, because of the way you do counter stacking and step losses, if you wanted to use minis, you'd have to integrate them with the counter. So from a practical perspective, you'd either have to have the mini on the board, and off the side, you'd have to match the counters and track it, which you could do. Or you could put the mini on top of the counters, I guess, something like that. But I don't think, I'm not going to speak for Dan, but I mean, well, I don't know. I don't think it would be a Dan versus game minis thing, unless it just started selling really well and people demanded it or whatever. I would not envision that. I would say if people were interested in playing it with minis, probably the best thing to do is proxy other minis for it.
Now, who's your market audience for this?
Oh, that's a good question. Dan ran, I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, remember Dan ran Valkyrie and it didn't fund, which was his sci-fi sort of mechs combat game.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Yeah, and in full disclosure, For What Remains didn't do nearly as well as Pavlov's House or Castle Lit or even By Stealth and Sea. So what that tells me is that, but I mean, Lock and Load had that game that did pretty well. It was a sci-fi skirmish infantry kind of space combat thing.
Space infantry.
Yeah, space infantry, and it did well. So I mean, I won't say there's no market for it. I don't think the market from a war game publisher for a sci-fi themed game is necessarily super strong. And I think also if it doesn't have a 4,000 minis in it, I think that's going to hurt it on Kickstarter too. So, I mean, my hope is that people who are interested in sort of light war games, skirmish war games, ironically, the same crowd that likes Undaunted, right? Which is either a war-themed board game or a super light war game or whatever people want to call it. I don't really care what they call it. But it's kind of in that same class of games.
Well, I mean, when you said Undaunted, in my mind, David Thompson still is the war gamer guy. Okay, and I know you've done War Chest and you're doing For What Remains and all that, but for some reason you're still the war gamer guy. So yes, Undaunted is very attractive. Whatever. To get a broader audience, okay, on For What Remains. I mean, what does it take? I know you're publishing it with Dan.
Yeah.
Can Dan Versen sell that license to, for lack of a publishing game company, Rio Grande? Can he sell that license?
I think Dan could probably do. I think Dan has the ability to do whatever he wants with it, right? Like he owns the rights to it, and I won't go into all of our contract specifics, but effectively, as long as Dan wants to sell the game, he owns the rights to it. He could do whatever he wants. He could sub-license it out. I don't think that's any problem at all. I think realistically, the game has to do kind of well in its core like demographic, which was primarily war gamers from the start, based on it coming as a DVG game, and it would just have to organically grow. I think that's the most likely scenario where it gets broader publicity. I kind of hope that some people that know me from outside of the war game world will like review it and stuff, and that it'll get some attention beyond the typical war game content creation, because I think that could potentially help it.
I think, yeah. I'm not knocking down a wargamer family type thing, but we're a small family, man. And
yeah, and I mean, let's be clear. I want to make sure. So first of all, I love working with Rebellion and Osprey and AEG. They're awesome, but I mean, it's not even close. Like, I would much rather work with Dan and Sarah and Kevin.
Of course,
much rather. It's not even close. It's not even like there's not even in the same category.
Yeah, because you're dealing with human beings.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I know, and let's. So
not that Osprey and Rebellion are not human beings, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's closer. It's closer.
Yep. Yeah, it's like a family, and yeah, I would much rather make a lower print run, but work with them than a higher print run with a different company, right? Like, that's just the
hold on a second, Honcho. A lower print run,
smaller print run.
Yeah, well, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yep.
If Hasbro comes up to you and says, "Hey, look, Mr. David Honcho, we're going to give you $1 million." You know what I'm saying? Come on. But
we don't have to worry about that hypothetical. But
I know exactly what you're saying. 100%. Obviously, I'd rather work with a family than with, for lack of a better word, a corporation. Obviously. Yeah. And I'm sure they see it that way too. But you know what? Money talks and walks.
Yeah, but I mean, here's the thing. This is I don't know how much this is worth to people, but when I had to pitch War Chest to AG, I had to pitch Undaunted to Osprey, I had to pitch, those games, all of those games I had to pitch. Things are a little bit different now with like Rebellion coming to me for Sniper Elite or whatever, because I've designed the other ones. But most of the time in the normal non-war game world, you go through the process of pitching a game.
Okay.
I'm in the relationship now with Dan that if I say, Dan, I want to design a game on the whatever, some topic that makes somewhat, Jesus, dude, I want to design a game about Italian human torpedo operators.
Yeah.
So that's worth a lot. That's worth a lot more than, than pretty much anything. So.
Yeah, I know. What was I going to say, for God's sake? War gamers, it's a small family. We're dysfunctional in a beautiful way, and it's great. Now, do you have the same relationship with Osprey as with Dan Verson, where the name David Thompson says, "Oh, well, yeah, whatever David Thompson pitches, we're going to get it"?
Okay, so kind of, and what I mean by that is Osprey is let's talk about like the nesting. This is like the Russian nesting doll. The people I work with at Osprey are the board game division of the game division, which is part of Osprey. And you probably know, like Osprey, most people think of the book publisher, right? Like all the war game books and stuff, or war books. So there's the board game division within the larger game division, which is within Osprey, which Osprey is then owned by, I forget the name. It's a big company that mostly deals with other kinds of books. So I don't have a clue. I've never interacted with the bigwigs of the people who own Osprey, and I never will.
Right.
I have an extremely good relationship with the developers, right? And I have an extremely good relationship with the game marketing people, right? Like, I know them. We talk all the time. I love working with them. And now if I'm like I said, we're on number 4 of the Undaunted series with them as from a design perspective. And so if Trevor and I go and we say, hey, we're going to do X, Y, Z, they're not going to say, oh, well, you need to run it by us first, or where we have full flexibility. And without getting into like numbers and stuff, they now have a lot more flexibility. The game division now has a lot more flexibility to do larger initial print runs and stuff because the game has established itself.
Okay.
But even still, if I wanted to design a game and pitch it to Osprey or have Osprey publish it, I would have to pitch it to them just like I was anybody else pitching them a game.
Right. Of course. But I mean, if you have a good track record, obviously, listen, you know what I'm saying? And which is normal.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It's exactly like, anybody else. Yep.
Am I getting too much off topic here?
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Okay, so here we go. Here, I had a la here. Kabuki Kid always comes up with the strange questions, and that's something actually I was gonna ask. So, what's the last thing you read for pleasure?
For pleasure,
yeah.
I don't really read a lot for pleasure, mostly because of time, right? So, between job and being a dad and being a husband and designing games, I don't have a ton of time left. Usually my free time, I'm either tracking what's going on with the Atlanta Falcons or the Atlanta Braves or whatever. Oh, I know what it was. Infantry Combat. Do you know that book? Hold on. John Antel, I think. I forget his name. Herman probably knows. Somebody that's smarter than me in the comments will be tracking and know. He is a former Army officer, specialist in, like, I think tactics. He's written a book that is basically like a choose your own adventure style book for Army tactics. Hold on, I'll grab it so I can actually tell people correctly.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is my Roman helmet. It is the Roman helmet which gave you toilets and clean water. Now we're back to our show.
Infantry Combat, the Rifle Platoon.
Oh my God, that sounds so interesting. You got to be kidding me, man.
I also was reading about knowledge capture recently. You know when I say knowledge capture, like when you're transitioning for, like, somebody's getting ready to retire and you have to bring in a new person. That wasn't purely for fun. Right now? That's what I've been reading lately about techniques for knowledge capture. Yeah.
You're like 25 years old. What the hell are you? You're never.
It's not for me. It's not for me. It's not for me. So I'm the senior analyst where I work, and we have a ton of people that are retirement age, and so I'm building out a strategy for how we're going to do knowledge capture work. So building out models for, like, how capturing the issues that they're specialists on and how we're going to transfer that to the new people, etc.
Oh my God, you must be incredible on a date, Dave.
Hey, do you know? Hey, let's take a real quick personal break. You know what my wife and I have discovered recently that's like the best date ever? So my kids are now, my son, who's 6, I taught him how to ride a bike this summer, and so now all the kids know how to ride bikes. And so I own a bike for the first time since I was a kid. And since I bought a bike, my wife and I have started biking. And so we go on these, usually like 10 mile or so. We'll, like, bike to a small town and have a bite to eat or whatever. And it's the best date ever because there's no distractions while you're biking. You're just biking together and talking.
It's zen, I guess.
Yeah, it's nice.
It's like in mushrooms. It's zen. It's zen.
Yeah. Yep.
So, okay. So you got no time to read for pleasure.
Well, I mean, this genuinely was. This is a really. I highly recommend this.
Get off the nerd bandwagon. Become. Oh my God.
Okay. All right. Hold on.
Jesus. Bloody hell. Like,
I got nothing, man. We already established I'm super nerdy.
So it doesn't bother you. It doesn't bother you to read for. Because basically you're reading for work, you're reading for games, you're reading for this, you're reading for that. It's, well, if it's pleasure, that's fine. Everybody, whatever. One person's garbage is another person's ex-wife, whatever. Yeah. So you don't read lackadaisically.
I do. Okay, so, like, my free time reading is probably I've got my news aggregator, Flipboard, which is like the app I use. So I'm reading, like, news stories, or I read a lot about, like I said, the Atlanta Falcons or Atlanta Braves, like what's going on. I'll read about. I don't usually watch the Braves live, so I'll read about what they did or whatever. But it's not like sit down and read a book. But
watching the Braves play and reading about the Braves is a totally different experience.
It is different, and I will watch them if I'm able to. If I have, like, time and I can sit there and enjoy it, I'll sit down and watch it.
I got a question from Herman. Playtesting and development is the most important part of any successful design. Do you have a dedicated local team that helps you with that function, David Thompson?
Yeah, kinda. So when I lived in Cambridge, I lived in Cambridge from 2014 to 2018. Um, Cambridge had a design and playtest group called the whatever. It was part of Playtest UK, which is the largest organized playtest group in the world. Um, and it had tons of other designers that are published designers with tons of like other games that better selling games than I have. So a lot of successful guys. And so we would meet weekly at a pub in Cambridge and do testing. Since I moved to the US, there's not a ton of people. There is a local game store that has a playtest group. I haven't met with them a ton. Instead, what I'll typically do is now I've transitioned to Tabletop Simulator. So I'll meet other designers and sometimes just playtesters on Tabletop Simulator. And I usually do that twice a week.
So, Tabletop Simulator, right? This is where we're going, right?
I'll tell you this, in the last 3 years, I've not made a physical prototype to test a game other than at the late stages when I'm testing it, not for gameplay, but for like ergonomics. Like, hey, make sure that this stuff is in the proper place or whatever. It's not too big or too small or whatever. But from like gameplay perspective, I no longer make physical prototypes for any of that. It's just quicker to iterate through changes on Tabletop Simulator.
And who programs all this Tabletop Simulator?
I mean, I do it all, but Tabletop Simulator is basically a physics engine. Like you don't have to do any programming, right? So you're just uploading files, and it kind of takes care of everything. It's a pretty low intensity thing,
and it's very flexible. You can move this to that to that.
Yeah. It is the closest approximation of a physical environment to play games in that I've found. Some people use Tabletopia. I think the Tabletop Simulator is, from a design perspective, is a lot better than Tabletopia. If you've got a finished game and you want people to play it, then they both have pros and cons.
So this is a Vassal killer.
So I vastly prefer it to Vassal, but I've tried doing Vassal modules, and I'm just not smart enough to get it, man. I've tried over and over, and I just can't. It's beyond me. Yeah. I don't know what it is. It just can't. But it's all about where you spend your time. I literally have. I'm not joking when I look at this. 7,000 hours of Tabletop Simulator. Now that's not true because I leave it running overnight, but right. I probably have multiple thousands of hours of Tabletop Simulator time.
Really?
Yeah. Yep.
Wouldn't you rather bike ride or pick mushrooms?
Yes.
Like sincerely,
it's a means to an end. It's a means to an end, right?
Dave, if you don't mind, how old are you?
41.
41, eh? And you're still that dedicated.
I love it. I love it, man. It's fun. It's good because I get to create. That's all it is getting to create. Honestly, I've got to create. I've got to create something, and I'm not joking when I say that. Like, somebody asked me recently. It was an interview or something. They're like, "Hey, how do you become a game designer?" I forget what the question is. Like, what advice would you give to new game designers? My advice to new game designers is this:
you gotta love it.
Well, you got to love it, and that's what I'm about. You got to love it. If you can stop game designing, right? If you could just choose to not do it, then don't do it. Then don't do game design. What I mean by that is, like, if you can turn it off, then that means you're not passionate enough about it.
Right.
Because
Absolutely.
if I said I'm not going to design games anymore, period, I'm done with it, I just don't want to do it anymore, then all day long, every day, I would be mentally breaking down something that I'm encountering into a model to game design, right? So it's going to happen no matter what.
I mean, unless you're actually at that point where it's over.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And which is cool.
That's totally fine. And if you can do it, you should. Yeah.
Well, look, we've been going for an hour and 10 minutes. I could probably go for another hour and 10 minutes because I got to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and sand some fence. And you're going to be in your cushy job, and the office, and who knows what kind of secretary. Let's not even get into that. But do you want to add anything else? I know we've jumped from For What Remains to many different things and to your personal questions, which thank you very much, David. I really appreciate this. It's a lot of fun. Do you have anything you'd like to say in closing?
No, I think that's it. I'm gonna just look at this email real quick that I sent you. I want to make sure we didn't miss any major things. Anything we didn't cover, I can just reply to personally. So I think we're good.
No,
I
there
think
was
we're
a lot
good.
of questions, and we didn't hit all those questions.
Yeah.
Because that's my issue. That's my fault.
No. That's good. That's good. I told people, I was like, hey, we're going to talk about some of these. Send me your questions, and anything that we don't get to here, I'll answer on there. I think we're good, man. I think this was fun. More than anything, it's just fun to chat. So,
yeah,
and it's cool that Herman stopped in, and Kabuki Kid, who like you get to see some of your favorite online personalities here too. So that's cool.
And look, I mean, if we can do this again, if there's some other questions that
Sure. Yeah.
be answered, I'm available.
Yeah.
I know this is like basically we're sitting around in a bistro and we're having French fries, and or you guys still call them freedom fries?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. Who knows, man? I don't know what they are anymore.
I know.
They're not allowed to be French fries, I guess.
Whatever. And it's that kind of a show, and it's great. I love it. I mean, it's the same thing I would do with Mark Herman, John Butterfield. Just talk, man. Just blah.
I know.
Okay.
Well, hopefully, we'll talk again. Obviously, way before this, but hopefully someday we'll actually be able to go to conventions again and meet in person.
Oh man. Oh, that's what I wanted to ask you. If ever that happens, Dave, can you, because you're GM, RPG, and let's say WBC, and I know WBC conflicts with Gen Con, is it?
It did this past year, yeah.
And it did again.
Yep.
Back
then.
It
was going to this past year. If they had happened, they would have conflicted.
Because that's when I met Grant and Alexander, and I joke, I rib those guys. I love those guys, man. Those guys are real mentions, man. And I think they had to split because they had to go to Gen Con.
I think so, yeah.
Is there a chance where you can organize a big word, an RPG, like a 4-day run? Like that would be so cool.
I know, that would be awesome. Heck yeah, man. I'd love to run something for sure. Yeah.
Man, are you kidding?
Yeah.
Because
awesome.
after 11 o'clock, things die down a bit, and that's when the fun starts. And if we can have 2-3 hours of RPG every night on the same subject for a week,
that'd be cool. Yeah.
Can we make a 1-week story?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah.
Right.
Anything's possible, man. Anything's possible.
I mean, you're the nerd genius kid. You know what I'm saying? Dave, thanks a lot.
This was awesome, bud. It was great.
This was fun.
Yeah.
And stick around. I'm going to do the outro, and then whatever happens, guys. The Peanut Gallery. Thank you very much for Herman, Kabuki Kid, the Robert Moffat, Tom D, Nathaniel Robinson, who speaks 1 million languages, and all that. Kyle Seeley. Thank you very much. And hey, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was awesome.
Stick around.